Hello, everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of Unstoppable Success. I'm your host, Jaclyn Strominger, and on this podcast, as you know, we hear from amazing leaders and influential people out in the marketplace. We hear their insights, their tips, their tricks, and all the things that have helped them be unstoppable and things that they can share with you. And today, I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you to DeeAnn Palin. And let me tell you a little bit about DeeAnn. She is the founder and CEO of OnPoint Business Solutions. She is known as the CEO Whisperer. She helps CEOs and boards accelerate growth, avoid costly people mistakes, and prepare for strategic transitions. Very important. So many people forget about that part. With 20 years as a corporate executive and 12 years as a business owner, she brings a deep expertise in business coaching, fractional HR strategies to guide companies through sustainable growth and transformation. So, thank you for being here, Deanna.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
Okay, so before we get into like I know you're the CEO of a company, but I'm always curious because a lot of where people are comes from where they've been. So share with a little bit about like what brought you where you are now and why this was so important to you.
Great question. It took me a little bit to come out of the closet on this one. I ran
I
HR
know.
departments for 10, 12 years. And honestly, I hated it.
Oh,
And so I went back, got my MBA, got certified in change management, project management, and started running operations for companies for the next 15. And every time I looked under the hood at one of those companies, I saw people issues creating unbelievable stress on companies' expense lines and their ability to create revenue, retain clients, and frankly, the CEO's own wherewithal to want to keep running a company. And I left the Phoenix Suns in 2014, started OnPoint Business Solutions with the express intent of helping founder-led or PE-backed companies really figure out how to accelerate growth for their businesses through primarily the talent acquisition process, the talent management process, and everything that has to be aligned around that.
so I love that. So I'm curious. So when you were in HR and then you're in operations and you're seeing this, like what was like one big sign where you're like, oh God, they just don't get it.
Well, the reason I didn't like HR was because it was so compliance based, so yes, no ma'am, so police officer-y, grim reaper-ish, and all reactionary. And when I got into operations and I'm managing P&Ls for companies and I'm managing expense lines, the thing that I kept seeing, if we don't really measure as companies a lot of what it costs to hire,
Oh
what
God,
it
it's huge.
costs for turnover, what a B player leadership team can do to a company from an expense standpoint. If you don't allocate resources correctly, if you don't pay them right, if your benefit plans stink or don't drive the behaviors you want to accomplish in a company, all of that can really, really, really affect profitability. And for most founders, their ultimate pinnacle is selling a company or creating some kind of legacy outcome. And if you don't have the right profitability, you don't have the EBITDA. The EBITDA is the multiplier for what you get to keep in the bank. And so I often can find 1, 2% to add to their EBITDA, which is a lot of money.
Right,
And
that is a lot of money.
it drives, it's not just about the money. I mean, CEOs care about having high performing team members, having fun at work, having customers that love what you do. It makes running the business fun when you have the right team aligned around the right things.
Yeah, it's so true. We're going to talk about alignment in a second, but I'm really I'm when you're sitting here talking about the cost of hiring, the cost of turnover. I mean, to me, that should be a number one focal point for a company. I mean, I think in the United States, you probably know the number. It's like in the billions of cost.
It's crazy, and I'll give you just one example. We had a service-based boots on the ground company that we supported. It's a national company with 300 plus employees in 26 states, and their turnover was over 100%. And they had to drop people service business into different environments to actually do investigations. And what was happening is they're moving these people across city lines, state lines, putting them up in hotels, having overtime costs, having, all these challenges with managing their bench, their turnover, their staffing, overtime. Just us fixing their systems, cleaning up their retention costs, tightening up their hiring and their onboarding. Conservatively, we saved them 1.3 million in cost on the outrun. And you talked about recruiting or turnover costs in particular. For a line level staff, the cost is easily $6,000 a person for turnover. And you annualize that with 150, 200 frontline employees turning over in a given year, that gets to be pretty darn expensive. One executive can be $300,000 to $500,000 in turnover cost. And that doesn't include oftentimes the cost of a recruiting firm, executive search to hire and replace them, let alone just the brain damage on a CEO and everybody else carrying that workload, lack of productivity, customer and company brand. It's pretty scary how expensive that is and how loosely we hold on to the importance of that.
Yeah, so I want people to understand like this is such a huge cost and it's such an important factor. People is it's so important. So you're talking with the CEOs and you're working with their company and their teams. You know, I would say, I would think one of the first things that you would need to look at is values, the values of the company and the values of um, the CEO and how they're bringing in. So how do you start to fix this?
I usually work with the CEO and their executive team to create a strategic plan that encompasses everything from their BHAG. Where do you want to be 10 to 30 years out? What do you need to accomplish in 3 years, financially, non-financially? What are your key capabilities? And part of that is what is your purpose of your company and your core values?
Hmm.
And, I'm dating myself saying this, but Enron had a set of values and we saw what happened to them, integrity, teamwork. So it really is about making sure those values have behaviors aligned to them, that we know exactly what they look like in motion, and that a CEO and the organization would live or die by those values. You hire and fire employees, you hire and fire clients and vendors and suppliers, and you manage performance and bonuses and outcomes of the business tied to those values. That's the only way they become real. And I will tell you, engagement goes up exponentially when you've got people that are aligned to what they need to do at the business, a leader that believes in them, and a set of core values that are aligned to their own personal core values. So all of that is so critical to success and productivity.
Oh my God, I like you're speaking like it's music to my ears, but listeners, this is so important because sometimes I think we don't think about our values as much. We might think about our purpose, but we don't really hone in on values. And it's imperative to know the values that you stand for. So if you haven't taken the time to do a values assessment, just listeners, go ahead and do it. Go do one. I'm sure we can. I have one. I'm sure DeeAnn has one.
Yeah.
So, we can make sure you got one ready for you to do. So once you get the values in checked, okay? And then how do you get everybody else on board? Because, you know, as you said, your, the team has to, and the CEO has to live and, die by these values.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can think about what happens, but I mean, how do we get everybody on board?
I will tell you the biggest impetus for positive or um, lack of momentum is around that executive leadership team. The first thing I ask a CEO to do with me is sit down and evaluate each of their executives on a 4-box grid. Potential up one side and performance across the bottom. And performance is not just what they accomplish in their role, but how well are they living and governing those values for the company? Governing is a huge part of it. Are they allowing poor behavior just because someone's performing to be okay? Are they stepping on people's necks while they're hitting the sales numbers? That kind of stuff, you don't realize the collateral damage that poor behavior can have to a team and to customers and to the outcomes of the business. So the first thing I do is really assess, do we have an A player leadership team? Do we have a leadership team that is high performing, has each other's backs, and is governing and living and modeling those core behaviors? And then we do that talent calibration throughout the organization to really assess, do we have the right idea and alignment around what performance is? Meaning, does every person live those values and are they high performing in the role that they're defined to?
So I can see how easy that could be with like a smaller company, but how do you do with a company that's like 1,600 people or thousand, like more than multiple hundreds of thousands?
It's not easy. It's
I'm
not
like,
easy.
I'm
But
like,
I'll tell
that's gonna take
you,
a long time.
yeah, well, it doesn't really have to. A lot of companies over define and over process talent management. I really think if you can get people in a room together and really calibrate, and we do it with the simple, I've done it simply with a flip chart with 4 boxes, hand everybody a stack of sticky notes, and they put those folks up on the board. And we talk about it and we move people around. And the leaders are taking notes about their own talent, getting feedback from each other about what other people observe. They get challenged by each other. And then we create development plans in those conversations for that group. That bottom left quadrant is they got to get up or out. They're on the hairy edge of not performing. And is it our fault or is it theirs? Have we given them a clear role? That top left is they're high potential, low performance. They're new to the job. They don't have the right scope and responsibility. What do we need to do to speed up their onboarding? That bottom right is those are our safe pairs of hands. Those are our solid performers. We just need to get out of their way and let them do great work. And that top right are our rock stars. What are we doing to support them, develop them, stretch them, expand scope? And when you get a leadership team owning talent like that, great things happen, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be this horrible succession planning, meet every 2 weeks, build these big, huge development plans and coaching. It really is about making those conversations come to life and your leadership team knowing it's their job to own and develop that talent.
I like what you said. Oh, it's up to the leader to help own and develop their talent, and it's so important. Own and develop. So much can happen when people actually do that, and there's so much that a person who's being developed will take with them because it means so much to them. So I'm curious of those people that are in that lower left quadrant, right?
Mhm.
So when you're having these meetings, do you sometimes actually find that, executive management team A person is going to be like, you know what, I think that, you know, DeeAnn actually might be better over here. She's not performing great in this role, but, I've had a conversation with her. Maybe she would be better, like, because I almost feel like that is one thing about leadership that people forget about. They might not be good in your department, but frickin' hell, they're going to be rock stars in Jaclyn's, right?
Yeah, that can happen. We use leadership assessments a lot for understanding the DNA of our team members, right? People are wired differently for
Yeah.
different jobs. And so I've used DISC, predictive index, culture index, aptive. All of them are kind of derived from the same set of principles, but you can really see how someone's wired and what kinds of roles they can be most successful in. So definitely, I think that's a good question. The other side of that is sometimes people don't want to make the tough call, and so they just move dead wood around. So it's really, do they have great skill sets and perfectly aligned values, and we should evaluate and develop them into a different role? Um, or are we scared to make decisions or moving too slow on letting people be successful somewhere else? And I use those words very, very intentionally because, oftentimes when someone's not performing, they hate it. They don't want to be there. They don't feel aligned. They're either from a skill set or a behavior, or maybe they and the leader don't work well together. Help them, just cut them loose and let them be successful somewhere else.
And again, that's actually a really key point. I think that, just to move this back, almost like for somebody who might be a solopreneur,
Mhm.
this goes back to also, if you are doing a task or something that you absolutely despise, that is something that you can say to yourself, I should hire somebody for that, right? It might be
Yeah.
something that you need to do. Hire somebody for that role. Or if you have a client that you're just like miserable with, fire them. Fire
Yeah,
the
yeah.
client, right? You're going to be so much happier, and then all your other clients are going to be will totally appreciate that. So just kind of a note to think about, on that realm. So something that you're saying just about the talent, and I pretty much believe this, but when you are aligned and they have it, what are just, I mean, I guess share some of those key benefits because I know some of them, but I think it's really amazing to see what happens at the company.
Yeah, when the team is
Teams
aligned.
aligned, yeah.
Yes. So, when people are in that bottom left quadrant, I will tell you the first question I ask the leader of that person is, do they know what success looks like in their role? Do they have the skills and the resources to be successful? Have you clarified and trained and developed the success for that role? So that is number one. And then beyond that, you have to look at a whole team, whether it's the executive team or an intact department or team. Do we have all the right skill sets on this team? And are they aligned around what the objectives and outcomes are that they need to deliver? So often organizations hide financials from employees and from leaders. And there is, especially for a founder-based company, there's lots of reasons, and I know them all, why we don't want to share everything. And that's okay. But what employees need to understand is how they can contribute to increasing revenue or satisfaction for customers, or how can I really stay focused on what success looks like in my job and not create a bunch of expense for the company. It's really, what does my role look like and how does it drive success for the company? And we've got to get down to that individual level. And as an executive team, I spend a lot of time working with executive teams on really understanding what's called a key function flow map. And that's deciding and looking at the whole pipeline from how many of what do we need, from a marketing lead to an SQL to, booking business. How many of what do we need to get through that pipeline to actually accomplish the revenue that we want? And if you've got revenue goals, you better be able to stream it all the way back to how many of what is it going to take to get this? And then being able to get that executive team aligned and operating in synchronicity to accomplish that. Looking at it every single week. What are the metrics that are going to get us? How many of what do we need to create, develop, deliver, ship to get us the revenue and the profitability that we're seeking?
I just love that you said that because it's so important weekly. Like, look at that metric weekly. Listeners, if you're not looking at your metrics weekly, start right now. Today, whatever day is that you're listening to this, start right now. Look at your metrics.
I would say first, make sure you have them set
Right.
and
Yes,
that
that's
you
very true. Right.
and
Yes,
that
set
you
them first.
yeah, and that you know what the critical few are for the
Right.
company because
Right.
I so often I either see we've got too many metrics and most of them are rear view mirror telling us
Right.
whether that we failed or that we didn't deliver or that we did instead of really what are those leading indicators and the metrics that really drive our business. You know, what are those 5 to 7 company metrics that drive our business and tell us we're successful?
Yeah, I like to call them the income producing metrics. Like
Yes. Yeah.
what are those income producing things that we have to do? What are the goals that you are setting for the company? Look at them every single week. If you're not reaching them, I always use the terminology MMA, measure, monitor, and adjust.
Mhm.
MMA, measure, monitor, and adjust. Go back and rinse and repeat. I would say tell everybody business is boring in the sense that you've got to keep looking at the same things, right?
Yeah, yeah. The
And
monotony of it is what's important. You know,
right.
having
Inconsistency
the
is, yeah.
cadence of your one-on-ones, your team meetings, your monthly ops reviews, your quarterly planning meetings. You should be planning your business in sprints, and the cadence of that becomes so critical. That's how CEOs actually get to go home at night and spend time with their kids, is when they've got an organization and a leadership team that understands the cadence. They know what success looks like. They've got the outcomes measurement. They've got the metrics in place.
Yeah.
CEOs can't carry all of that. Otherwise, you're just spinning plates.
Well, yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah, we want to put those plates on shelves in order to do that, right? They're
Mhm.
nice, stacked neatly. And I love what you said about sprints. Again, music to my ears. I always talk about, 30, 60, 90 days. It's 90 days. You have to always be looking at that. That's why it's whatever your quarter is, those are things to look at and
Mhm.
plan by,
Yep.
you know. So, you know, we've talked about obviously, talent, but is there something else that, when you're talking to CEOs and founders that they just are blind to besides talent?
Um, I think there's a couple things. One, I will tell you, it fits in the talent category, but it's an expense line. You
Mm-hmm.
know, benefits and compensation are not an expense.
Mm-hmm.
They are a revenue growth leverage point. So if you're looking at your benefits and your process as a founder is my controller hired a broker, it might be my friend, it might be theirs, that's typically the case. And about 90 days before renewal, they're going out to bid and telling me I've got a 15 to 60% increase. And I'm writing a check and swallowing that pill. And I'm paying everybody what I think I have to pay in the market. And I haven't stepped back to that 50,000 foot and said, who is this company? Who do we serve? What do we do? And really step back and look at your total reward strategy and make sure it's aligned to your business strategy. Who are my critical employees? What is the makeup of my team? What behaviors am I trying to drive? What outcomes do I want or need? You have to think of your total reward strategy in those terms because you can create health and wellness plans that drive productivity, that encourage people to stay healthy. You can put dollars towards certain things that make it easy for employees to come to work and get healthy. Things like telemed, things like, smoking cessation, wellness. If you really want a highly productive team that gets you the outcomes you need, you've got to look at what behaviors you're trying to drive. And same is true with compensation. It's not a one size fits all in terms of paying to market or above market. What positions do you have the biggest challenges serving your customers? What are those positions that could shut your business down if you don't have the best and brightest in? What are the ones that really cause you to increase customer penetration or revenue. And I'm not just talking about salespeople, I'm talking about the people that are delivering products and services. Pay attention to that flow of your product and service through the business. And make sure that you're looking at your compensation plans to say, I can pay above market. I need to pay above market for this because it's one of our key capabilities. We've
Mhm.
got to have the best and brightest in this function. Everybody else can be paid at market, but I need to pay above market for these two or three positions because they're so critical to our company. And then you've got to back into bonus plans and rewards. Benefits and comp should not be an expense line. It is a growth engine. It's the number one or two expense in most companies are your payroll costs.
Mhm.
Goodness gracious, don't let them be a reactive tactical thing for you. Make sure they're driving business growth.
I would feel like you want to be able to say when you write that check for payroll and for your benefits, you want to be smiling because you know that you are helping every single one of your employees. And it's like, thank you for being here. Thank you for your
Yeah.
service. Thank you for the job well done. And I love that you shared a reward strategy because I don't really necessarily think a lot of companies have that baked in.
Well, I'll tell you what I see a lot when we drop into a business. I see salespeople being highly compensated because it's easy, it's quantitative, and you want all that upside. And if those are critical employees, absolutely. But don't miss those that are building and delivering your services because sales can sell all day long, but somebody's got to deliver and make sure those customers are happy, right? So you don't want to miss the boat on really looking again at that key function flow, right? You're looking
Right.
at who's selling it, who's delivering it, how satisfied customers are, what is our quality as a result. And it depends. I've worked in over 22 different industries. So, it really depends on industry where those levers are, but you've got to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And it's so important, you know, as you said, sales can sell all day long, but it's the people who are actually working with the customers one-on-one. They're the ones that matter so much because that's where your retention stays. Like
Mhm.
you could, how much does your team have to sell if you're retaining X number of clients?
And I would say, Jaclyn, it's even more than that. You're exactly right. You've got the hunters on the front end of the business, your sales teams. You have farmers managing those clients. And you need to be looking at your business to say, how could I expand this customer, what we're delivering, how often we're delivering, how can I get referrals from them? I think so often clients don't think about how they can farm their current clients. Even just looking, I'll give you an example. We have a client that works with hospital groups and they build their contracts hospital by hospital, department by department. And if you look at how hospitals are run, there's usually hospital groups, right? So if your contract is directly with a hospital department in Phoenix, Arizona, that's one customer, one client. That hospital group might be made up of seven hospitals
Mhm.
in 23 different areas, right? And are you working that food chain is what I call it with the
Yeah,
CEO.
right.
Who is managing that larger relationship and those larger contracts to expand your opportunity? If you've got one thrilled customer in the corner of one hospital, man, work that food chain and build that relationship with the hospital group.
Right. I'd like to say build that relationship capital because
Yeah.
that relationship capital is gold. And I actually just shared this the other day with one of my clients, basically saying how, the people that you currently know are the people that you should concurrently be building,
Right.
right? Don't forget that, you already have them, work with them. Build
Yeah.
build that relationship capital. It is so important. And you're talking about hospitals, and let me tell you, I see firsthand they are so many hospitals are a mess. I was gonna try to use a different word.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they're a mess. And it's interesting because I feel, and you could, tell me what you think about this, but it's like sometimes I feel like the CEOs forget that some CEOs are great with this, but some CEOs forget that the doctors and the physicians are one of their number one customers. They need to keep them happy.
Yeah. Well, and I'll also tell you, I see this in engineering firms. I see this in any kind of company where you have trained specialists, like doctors, like lawyers, like, people that go to school for lots of years to hone their craft. Those people don't usually have business degrees,
Hmm.
right? They don't have experience running a business. And so making sure that if you're a hospital group, if you're a big engineering firm, if you're a law firm, any company, but especially those, making sure that you've got the expertise to run that business inside, right? I'll tell you, Jackie, I have two girls. They're 21 and 24. And one of the requirements of me paying for their undergrad was that they had to have at least a minor in business because it's too much job security for me when people don't know how to set up and run a business. And, I think it's so critical that you've got the right operational structure, all of the things that we've talked about, right? Knowing how to set up a culture, knowing how to create profitability, knowing how to lead a team, how to align around goals, how to manage customers and delivery. All of that doesn't happen on accident.
No, it doesn't. And you're right. It's so important to have that degree, and to understand the importance that business is in every is everywhere, and
Yeah.
you can take that wherever you go.
Mhm.
It's so important. So, Dan, you are such a doll. I love and just like loves connecting with you. I could talk to you probably all day about this, but what is the best way for our listeners to connect with you and get more of your greatness?
Our website is OnPoint Biz, so it's ONPTBIZ. You can connect with me there. That's a great space. We do a lot of work, fractional HR for companies. We do a lot of merger and acquisition work, helping companies look for and build value to grow and manage to find the revenue and profitability in the human resource function. So again, it's www.onptbiz.com.
Okay, we will make sure we put that in the show notes. Listeners, please do me a favor, share this episode with your friends, business colleagues, because there is so many important nuggets of information here in this episode. And then do me the other favor, if you haven't already subscribed, subscribe. And lastly, we have a brand new community on the school platform, and it's the Unstoppable Success school community or on the school platform. So go over there. That link will be in the show notes, and please join us because we are making it free for the first 100 people. So thank you so much, DeeAnn, for being an amazing guest. And thank you, listeners, for listening. Because of you, our show keeps growing every single month. And so I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm your host, Jaclyn Strominger. This is Unstoppable Success, helping you leap to your greatest success. I'm Jaclyn Strominger, and I want to invite you to join the Unstoppable Success community on School. You can go to Unstoppable Success at school-9143 and join us. In this community, you will get daily tips so that you can be unstoppable, and you'll also connect with other leaders and professionals who are also aiming for their unstoppable success and are there to help you succeed. So join us in the community. We can't wait to see you on School.